The debate on the form of the state has been animating public opinion for a while now. In fact, it is at the center of the conflict ongoing in the northwest and southwest regions between the government, who says that Cameroon must remain one and indivisible through a unitary decentralized system, and separatists who are seeking to restore what they say is the former mandated and later trust territory of British Southern Cameroon, presently the northwest and southwest regions of the country. Since the conflict broke out, several proposals have been made to government, who has categorically refused that secession is off the table. And amongst the proposals that have been made to the government as concrete solutions to the crisis is the concept of confederation. Now, we shall be looking in this edition of the program whether confederation can solve the ongoing Anglophone crisis and usher Cameroon into an era of peace, stability, as well as development. That's our main issue for tonight. And with our guests, we shall be looking at some other aspects. Welcome to Hard Talk. Now, our guest tonight is a social critic, politician, education promoter, as well as a medical doctor. Dr. Nick Ngwanyam, welcome to Hard Talk.
Oh, thanks, Peter. It's a pleasure to be with you here, and it's kind of like fun. I love it.
Okay, yeah. Also, it's a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much.
The pleasure is shared.
Thank you very much.
Now, you are a firm believer. You have always said it in all the platforms that you have passed.
Yes.
That you stand for a confederation.
Yes.
But the status quo remains that the government says that decentralization is a key, and the government has made significant moves to ensure that decentralization becomes a reality in the country. Why do you think that decentralization cannot resolve the present-day conflicts we have in the country?
Well, I started and I was just admiring your hairdo. It's neatly done, and I can see that the barber used a razor blade to do the edges, and it's very beautiful. He could still try to use a knife. He could still try to use an axe. He will not do it. So it's not because these three elements cut that you have to not choose the right tool. So we've got a problem in the country. And if you don't choose the right tool, you will not solve the problem. It's about adapting the tool to the problem so that you get a beautiful solution. So while you are eating at table, you have a fork, a table knife, a spoon, and sometimes a sharp knife so you can cut the meat. When you come to tough meat, you take the sharp knife. You don't go with the table knife, you won't cut it. So that's federation is the tool that is adapted to solve the Cameroonian problem.
But like I asked earlier, why do you think that decentralization is not the best? Meanwhile, the government believes that it is the best system of governance and has gone as far as making significant moves in that light. Maybe talking about the code for local council as well as regional authorities that has already been enacted. We had local elections a few months back, and the major national dialogue, which also came out with the fact that decentralization remains key. Where do you think decentralization has failed in Cameroon?
You see, if we were talking of Cameroon and talking only of the French-speaking Cameroon, you could apply decentralization to it and it will work. But when you are talking of Cameroon, which has to remain one and indivisible, and you are referring to what we call West Cameroon and East Cameroon, then the tool that can work best under those circumstances is confederation. And you're talking about how the state is broken up. You first have to, because of our history and because of our socio-political identities and who we are, you first have to break the nation into two big chunks. The West Cameroon and the East Cameroon, which is clearly seen. And then you go in those chunks and then you apply now the current concept of decentralization and use that to break the 8 regions in this French-speaking part and to break up the 2 regions in the English-speaking part. But if you try to use a formula that just mixing everybody like plantain malaxé, it doesn't work, because in trying to solve a problem, you create more problems.
So what are some of the problems that you think that decentralization has created?
You see, I would say it and I will keep saying it, don't complain that I'm talking about it too much, because when you miss it, you don't get the point. And we still have to go back and take our bearings from what His Excellency President Paul Biya said in France in an interview with Mo Ibrahim. He said that for 60 years, the Francophones have been trying to railroad the Anglophones and make them to become Francophones like them, so that it's easier to manipulate, it's easier to handle or whatever. I don't know why they would choose to do such a thing.
But don't you think that is for better cohesion, to ensure that the administrative setup, economic development flows, and that Cameroonians have a better social life?
That's exactly it. Somebody deceived them that that's the best way to do it. And after 60 years, the president himself says that it has not worked, and we need to go back and leave the Anglophones alone. By leaving the Anglophones alone means let us look for a formula that gives them air to breathe in this one nation. And you know, this is the problem. When the president says one and indivisible, he is referring specifically to secession, that the nation cannot, part of it cannot be ceded off. But one and indivisible doesn't mean that you cannot go in there and redefine what is happening in there. So people, especially politicians who think they are very smart and are trying to deceive people, they say, no, the president said it's one and indivisible, so federation cannot work, confederation cannot work, it's only decentralization. Even the decentralization is you have still divided. So to say one and indivisible specifically means no part of it is going to be cut off. I could cut off as a surgeon, I could cut off your limb. The limb is doesn't longer belong to you. It's cut off. But we are not cutting off any part of Cameroon. So one and indivisible should be understood in that light. One and indivisible excludes secession, but it does not exclude federation, and it does not exclude confederation. They use it to kind of like throw that off the table and are left only with decentralization. But come to think about it, when we use the word decentralization, when you use that word decentralization, according to Americans, they understand it differently. But people coming from the French culture understand it differently.
Okay, Doctor, now let's get to the basics.
Yeah.
What is confederation?
Confederation, in simple language, the word confederation and federation were used as synonyms a couple of years back. That means you could use one, in the place of the other. In the place of the other. What would be a good word synonym for something that I don't. My English is getting rusty now, but you in speaking or doing business or whatever, if you could start the phrase and a sentence and be talking about federation, and by the time you are ending, you use the word confederation, it will still be understood as meaning the same thing. And so when we started in 1961, it was a federation. But what has happened over the years is that the words have matured and taken on different meanings, which means that if today we use the word federation for Cameroon, it will be wrong. And the appropriate word to use to define us would be a confederation. Now let me explain. And where does it stem from? And I keep using this clear example. Let's take a country like Kenya. Kenya had her independence on one day, and it has been one state. But Kenya is a big country and has many big groups like the Luos, the Kikuyus, and some other ones. Imagine that this country has difficulties with management and making things work, and they will want to break it up into smaller bits so that it's manageable. They would start off by breaking the country into big chunks, and then you go into the big chunks and break them up into smaller chunks. So those big chunks, those big chunks that you break up, those first set of big chunks are referred to as a federation. That means you take a big country that has one independence, one everything, and then you break it up to those big chunks. Those big chunks now become federal states. However, sometimes you have countries that that merged together, but they were independent states. They were different states, you know, different days of independence and different people, different culture. And then you want to make something that is bigger. So you pull them together and tie them up, and then it becomes bigger. Under those circumstances, you don't use the word federation. You use the word confederation. And when you use the word confederation, it tells everybody that these were independent peoples that have come together. That's the difference. You now see why in Cameroon we have to use confederation and not federation? Because East Cameroon had her independence in January 1960, and West Cameroon had her independence in October 1961. The one speaks French, the other speaks English, and they're two different people with two different mindsets, and that's what we ought to do.
But how workable is it in Cameroon at the present times? We have a conflict in the northwest and southwest regions. We have a political climate which is not so calm at the moment, and we do have social tensions here and there, though we can say that the peace is still there. But how workable is this confederation concept that you so much hold dear to?
It is what is workable, and is the only thing that is workable under these circumstances. And people who would tell you that it's not workable is because they are trying to confuse everyone else and take everybody for a fool. No, not everybody is a fool. You could confuse people for so long, but you cannot confuse all the people all the time. You can always argue because you probably have the ace and the joker. You could always argue for now and say blah, 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 and try to cut corners and things like that. But there is a better way of solving a problem. There's a better way of doing business, and wisdom calls for you and I to use the best tool to solve the problem.
Now, like I said, how workable is it in a context like Cameroon?
Okay, so let's go to the specifics.
Yeah, let's go to the specifics.
Okay, let's go to the specifics.
Are we going to have, let's say, two houses of parliament?
Good.
Or maybe three? How many governors are we supposed to have?
Now, let's just get to the specifics now, so that when someone is trying to deceive you, say, Ngwanyam said this, and this. Yeah, it's very important. And you ask me, listen, we need to go back and define West Cameroon and also define East Cameroon. But in defining West Cameroon and East Cameroon, let's understand that when you go to West Cameroon, the people of the Southwest have an issue with the people of the Northwest. They think the people of the Northwest are marginalizing them.
Are you sure?
Well,
about that, you know.
Well, but this is it. In every family, there's a problem. I was listening to, I think some president, is it from Guinea or from somewhere, talking about the problems in Somalia. I have it on video, on tape on my phone, and he was taking the example of Somalia, and he was kind of like confused. He said, look, Somalia is an interesting country. It's one people, one religion, you know, and the Muslim religion, they have Sunni and all whatnot. But there in Somalia, there's only one version of it. And they speak only one language, so just one people. And they have been fighting for years now and tearing each other. And when you understand that, you would understand that even when you come to your house, and he was given this example where you could be in a family, and let's say there are 4 or 5 of you, and you are well-to-do, and when you even give your brothers money, they take it for a ride and still insult you. You know, so it's human nature. The problems we have in Cameroon are problems of human nature. And it doesn't matter how you break it down, there will always be problems. Go to a polygamous family, you will see it. Go to every family. If you see a family in Cameroon that doesn't have problems, it's a lie. Now, back to our story. What was I saying? We need to create a formula where people in the Northwest and Southwest are together, yet the people of these two people function differently, but under one umbrella. Then you come to the Francophone side, and then you cause the 8 regions to function independently. Because as you know, probably you don't know, but there's a lot of poverty in the North, and the North is not well developed, and we have been neglecting them too much. We need to give them a possibility to also develop, because the way we have been doing business for the past 60 years has not been effective. And we need to change and take a model that allows people to actually develop, for corruption to be controlled, and for the local people to have a say in what they want and what they don't want. And there should be some form of local control. But when these control mechanisms are taken away from the people just observe and they have no right to anything, then everything just breaks down. And so we need to change the way we do business. We have not been doing well. That said, it's also very important that Anglophones, Cameroonians should understand what I'm trying to say. Another part to it is power sharing in the nation. When we get a confederation, it will be easy now to bring in this concept of having a president and a vice president. If you don't do that and you mass up everything, then the Francophones will always vote a Francophone as president using their demographic might, and an Anglophone will never be a president, and you will always be slaves in this country. You know, when I'm dead and gone or whatever, just mark my words. If you don't do that, they will make you slaves for as long as the nation exists. So
you mean to say the Confederation also has its flaws?
No. The Confederation has some opportunity to protect to protect us who are in the minority, in the sense that we now say, okay, look, Cameroon has West Cameroon and East Cameroon. If a president comes from East Cameroon, he's allowed to be a president, or the presidency it must not be the same person. The presidency stays in East Cameroon for 10 years. Then, in the next 10 years that are coming, it goes to an Anglophone, and then it keeps reverting, okay? And there is a vice president that comes from the other side. And then, of course, you know that there's a National Assembly. The president of the National Assembly comes from the part of the country that doesn't have the president. So if we keep doing this, there will be a balance of power in the nation, and people will not feel left out. It's very, very important. And the other thing that you want to know is that, you know, we'll be able to define our economy, define the way we do our things, and not wait on Yaoundé or anybody to tell us what we have to do all the time. You know, like it is now, you cannot fill a pothole in the road, they will put you in prison for tampering with things. But in the Anglophone...
The government says that he has allocated resources and competencies now to councils to begin working on some of those issues. No,
but there's a better way of doing it. There's a better way of doing it. And governors, under those circumstances, governors will be elected. Governors will be elected, and they will be really in charge. And you know, you will have your own parliament, small government, and then you have two prime ministers, you know, a prime minister for East Cameroon and a prime minister for West Cameroon. And mind you, you know, sometimes people who want to torpedo this idea say, oh, it's a very expensive idea. It's not as expensive as you think.
Just coming to that, because I'm trying to ask, would that not be cumbersome?
It's not cumbersome.
One of the reasons which the Federation was outlawed in the first place was the former head of state, Aijo, thought that the federal system was cumbersome.
It was an excuse. It was an excuse to use it to take it away. Okay, look at it. If I ask you the question now, what is the use of Senate? Senate in Cameroon is no use.
But the Senate has been adopting laws.
Yeah, it's been adopting laws. What? Yeah, they have been adopting laws. They are present, but are they effective? No, it's just a money sucking organization. It's no use. You have 180 parliamentarians over here who think, except you are telling me that those 180 parliamentarians are not intelligent and are not good enough. If you say that, okay, then I will say yes. And then you are telling me that the quality of the people who are in Senate is better than the quality of the people who are in parliament.
But Doc, are you saying that countries which have parliaments and senators,
they know what they know what we are doing? I mean, they know what they are doing. But now, I wonder whether we know what we are doing. We have just put them there for putting sake, just to create jobs for people. But in reality, we don't need a Senate. We need a parliament that knows what it is doing, and it's enough. So, if you scrap this, if you scrap the Senate, you will have enough money. You scrap the Commission for Bilingualism, you will have enough money. If you scrap that thing called Social and Economic Council, is that what it's called, right?
The Economic and Social Council.
Yes, in the Economic and Social Council, you scrap that one, you will have some money. If you go in there and tweak ENAM a little bit and modify ENAM a little bit, you will have a lot of money. You know, if you look at it very carefully, most of the problems in this country are created by ENAM and ENAM projects. products. So there's something, and you need to, countries that are doing well like Ghana, Rwanda, Nigeria, they don't have ENAM. So the question is, how do they do it? It looks like, you know, it looks like the products of ENAM don't work for our nation, they work but for a different nation.
Don't you think it's an issue of education rather than rejecting the structure in itself?
That is it. Change it. It is the education. It is the syllabus. It is what they are being taught. Okay? You could still call it a number, teach them something else, and they will come back and you will not recognize Cameroon. Are we together on that? Call it anything. But what you put in the calabash, the calabash itself is not important. What you put in the calabash is what gives the calabash its value. It's like you using that word against special status. We were all explaining special status. What is it? It's just a calabash. What did you put in it to give it value? So, yes, take ENAM, change what happens in ENAM, and the whole nation changes.
Okay, Doctor, you have been, I would like to know whether you have put across this concept to authorities. We know that government has made several strides, particularly with the outbreak of the Anglophone crisis, to consult people, meet them, and have their take on what they think could be done to resolve the crisis and also other problems rocking the country. How far have you gone with making sure that authorities are aware?
I would say that when the Anglophone crisis broke out, it was very clear to me that the solution to the Anglophone crisis was the two-state federation. But you know, when people like Douala mentioned it and they were taken and locked up in prison, it became very difficult for anybody to talk about it. So I devised a technique to start seeding the air and the people's minds with the word federation. So I started off, if you can remember very well, that was more than 3 years ago. I started off by saying that no, Cameroon can have 10-state federation. Then after that, I said 11-state federation. I was playing with the word federation, should be playing in people's minds, and I was totally rejecting the word decentralization because I knew the federation had some power that decentralization didn't have. And when I was talking about the 11th state, I was putting in people's mind that Yaoundé should be taken out of the formula and should be on its own. But later on, I migrated to the two-state federation. And by the time I was migrating to the two-state federation, actually the vision had come to me, and I went and did my research and read, and then it became very clear to me that the word I ought to be using is confederation and not federation. I wrote it down on paper with many of the clauses that should appear in whatever document or whatever was being done. For instance, in the confederation, for instance, the Francophones, like if you take the army, the Francophones should have 60% of the army and the Anglophones have 40% of the army. English and French should be used in the army. The West Cameroon should have our own currency. And we shouldn't have gendarmes in West Cameroon.
Well, a sub-question.
Little things.
A sub-question to just follow what you said before coming back to the question I initially posed. With what you are just raising now, would that not instead give some of these states powers that they could one day rise against the central government?
No. It is.
Because we know we
power
are in Africa,
power comes to you.
And Africans are people who always like to go into conflict when their interests are not protected.
When their interests are not protected, I'm happy with that. So if you look at the war today, we have the war today because the interests of the Anglophones have not been protected. They have been abused and marginalized. So give people the power, look after them, help them to be comfortable, and then they will leave you in peace and everybody will be in peace. And if you look across Africa, that's the problem. The problems of Africa, if you take the problems in Cameroon, what are the problems in Cameroon on our fingertips? Number one, and the most important problem, is the Anglophone problem. That's the most important problem. Then second to that is the fact that youths in Cameroon have been neglected. I mean, whether be the Anglophones or Francophones have really been neglected. Forget about that thing that you have 7 ministries in charge of youth. Yeah, there are ministries, but what are they doing for youth? If when we go and look at it in substance, they're not doing very much to help youth to realize their dreams in life. And underlying all of that is a bad educational system that nobody seems to be saying.
Yes, of course. We'll be coming to that. But I asked an earlier question that Have you met authorities with
Good.
this concept, and what has been the response from them?
I was coming to that. So you see, when this sometimes you remember the story of Solomon when he had this dream about about being something. He told his brothers and so on.
Joseph,
I think it was Joseph. That's right. And then he became a slave. So sometimes when God shows you some dreams or things, if you say them before the time, it gets you into trouble. So there is a time for everything. There's timing. So I had to, though I had the ideas, but I had to lay low and be simmering, at a low pace. But at the right time, I sent that information to the presidency. I sent it to the presidency. I mean, quite about 2 years ago, I sent it to the presidency, and then during the national dialogue, when
the pre-dialogue consultation.
Yes, with the prime minister. I took mine and I went and gave it to the prime minister. I said, this is the solution to the Anglophone problem, and he took it. I think he dumped it in the dustbin.
Are you sure he dumped it?
Whatever.
Are you sure he dumped it?
No, dumping it in the dustbin means you didn't even read it, you didn't look at it, and even if you read it, you thought it was not much.
Maybe he must have looked at it, but the government has an agenda for Cameroonians.
That is the problem. The government has an agenda. The government has an agenda, but the government doesn't have the solution. The government is human beings. It's not like government is some super something. No, it's human beings. The question is, do we have a problem on the table? The solutions that you are bringing, are there solutions, and would they solve the problem? If they don't solve the problem, then it's not because it is government. Government is just people.
Okay, we'd like to take a slight break, and when we come back, we shall be entering into more issues. Welcome back. If you are just joining us, our guest is Dr. Nick Ngwanyam. He is a social critic, politician, education promoter, as well as a medical doctor. We have been talking about the Confederation concept, which he believes can solve and will solve the ongoing crisis in the country and usher Cameroon into an era of peace, development, as well as unity. Doctor, let's look at some of the issues surrounding the Anglophone crisis. The National Coordinator for the Reconstruction and Development of the two regions just rounded off a 2-week sensitization and awareness tour. You have been observing that particular move by Minister Porter. So what appraisal do you make of it?
Well, I'm glad that it's just an awareness and sensitization tour, and I would hope that he was sensitizing people and also had his ear to the ground and getting feedback. And if he was listening very carefully, they would have told him that the strategies that the government want to use although those strategies are wrong and they need to be modified. We have this kind of tendency where things come from above and they are spoon-fed to people down at the grassroots. And it has to be a bottom-up approach. If everything keeps coming from the top and falling on people like rain, sometimes you don't realize where the shoe really pinches and you make some huge mistakes. And it was a sensitization tour. He said that they are going to start constructing from where there is no problems or whatever and so on. But as you have heard me say before, we need to rethink the strategy, and the strategy that the government is using for reconstruction has to be rethought very carefully. Otherwise, it will yield no fruit.
Okay, a few weeks back, so the government of Cameroon came out to say that news about a ceasefire negotiation talk between separatist fighters and the government that had animated social media. Let me look at the statement. It says that it was not consistent with the reality. What do you make of that particular move?
I'm sure you have done literary appraisal. If you read those statements very carefully, the statement did not say that they didn't have a meeting. It fell short of saying that they did not have a meeting, but it said it insinuated that whatever came out of the meeting was probably not what was discussed. All right, so we can confidently say that there was a meeting, but unfortunately, you say that what came out on the social media it is not consistent with the reality, but you don't tell us what was the reality. Did you notice that? Am I communicating here? Am I making some sense? Yes. Listen very carefully. The communique, the communique does not say that there was no meeting. It would have just come out right to say, no, there was no meeting, period, and then everybody would have gone home. But it says that what came out of whatever talks and is circulating in the social media is not consistent with the reality. But at the same time, you fail to give us what was the reality, and that creates room for rumor. But the bottom line is there was a meeting. And until you give us what was consistent, then what Julius said stands.
Are you sure about that?
Well, it stands until you bring some of
you.
No, my view is when you bring to me what was said there, then I will say, Julius, you said this was said, and the government said this is what was said. Somebody must be lying. But Julius says this is what happened. The government says what is circulating is not what is reality, but doesn't tell us what happened.
But now, as someone who has observed how crises are being solved in other countries, how, in your view, do you think such a ceasefire negotiation should be carried out to ensure that the guns out there in the northwest and southwest regions do not smoke, and that lasting peace comes back to the country?
Well, whatever the theories are, you must first understand the human person. You know, the problem didn't just start with the guns shooting at each other. No, there was a problem that had been brewing for 60 years, and then down the line there was that last straw that broke the camel's back. Are we together on that? So if you're only looking at the last straw that broke the camel's back and you think that's the problem, then you get it all wrong. There's underlying problem, those root problems and so on that had gone deep. There's an expression of anger, and that expression was gradually rising like pressure in a pressure cooker, and then the pressure cooker exploded. So the question is, what is it that had been feeding that anger? So you need to create a system where you address those issues. You cannot just come and then just wipe it off.
But can they be addressed when the guns are still on? In the
that is the problem. That is the problem. You see, you have to wind back the clock, wind back things. You know, if you take a bundle of miondo, you know, you tie it like that. If you want to eat the miondo, you must unwrap it. So you must have unwrap it whether you like it or not. Otherwise, you will not get to the fruit. You have to unwrap it. And how do you do that? It's an issue of human. It's an issue that is based on communication. And for starters, you need to have people who communicate well. By communicating well means people who have a listening ear to others. If you are going to be dealing with people who think that other people are imbeciles and just cannot be listened to and have nothing to say, then you have lost it. You start off with people on both sides who would have that opportunity or who have that training to be able to listen to each other. Listening to each other with respect is very, very important. The war, what created the war was the fact that Anglophones were not listened to with respect. If they were being listened to with respect, there wouldn't have been a war.
So how should a ceasefire be carried out to ensure that they start digging?
Yes, this is the ceasefire. The ceasefire is for us to say, look, you know, make a noise and say, look, this war that has been going on for 4 years is a stupid war, and we need to stop it. People are dying on both sides. There's violence, and children are not going to school. And because we are sensible people, let us see how we can solve the problem. Make a general statement like that. Then now you say, okay, we are going to be talking. On the government side, these are the people who will be talking on behalf of the government. On the people of the fighters' side, these are the people. And not fighters, on the Anglophone side, because you take only fighters, it's just a small fraction.
But they are the ones that are,
yes.
government believes that they are causing all the chaos in the
no, they are the ones that have the firepower. They have the firepower.
They have the firepower.
They have the firepower. But the anger is spread in the community like roots. Are you getting me? But they have the firepower, and probably government seems to be listening to firepower. So they have the firepower, but it's not just the firepower that you can be listening to, because though they have the firepower, there's the community of Anglophones who can tell the others, please, can you hold back on the trigger? Can you hold back on the trigger?
And that's what the government has been urging the people to tell their brothers.
No, no, you cannot. Yes, it is that, but you have to be coming up with the carrot. Let the carrot be visible. But people are not seeing the carrot. You don't seem to be solving the problem, and then you are using the old techniques of always kicking people around. It's not by going around and killing people that you solve the problem. I mean, let's make the statement in a most blunt way. If you went out there now and killed all Anglophones, you have not solved the problem. The problem is not solved by killing people. No, it's not force. It's not violence. It's by use of wisdom. When you use wisdom, use love, use truth, use respect, and use your mouth, communication skills. That's all you need.
Don't you think both parties should also play
it's very important.
the same role to ensure
Yes,
that things comes
yes.
back to normal? Because the popular talk has been that people say that most of the fighters say government soldiers should leave the northwest and southwest regions of the country.
When they say government soldiers will leave there, it's an extreme position. It's an extreme position. Even after the Confederation, they cannot leave because the army is there for the national territory. But leave the territory. Leave would probably be go back to the barracks. Okay, because ceasefire in reality means everybody should turn the nozzles of their gun down. You understand?
Both camps.
Both camps turn the nozzle down. Ceasefire is different from drop your weapons. You understand what I'm saying? Ceasefire, when you first ceasefire, and then when you start to talk, and then there's some trust that is coming back, then the weapons just drop, and then you carry on with other things. But when we skip ceasefire and then just say drop weapons, and then yes, you go around and kill people and so on because they're not dropping weapons. Fine, you've killed them, but you're not solving the problem. You're not solving the problem. And the sad part about it is that because this war has been going on for a very long time, the phenomenon of the docks of war phenomenon has set in, and then the war economy has set in on both sides. So that now there are some people both on the side of government and the side of people fighting that the war has given them opportunity to make a lot of money and wealth. The war has given them a lot of opportunity to make a lot of money and wealth, and they will not want the war to stop. So it has become more complicated now as the time is running out, and we need to stop it now before there's total chaos.
Okay, Doctor. Many people find it very surprising. It might be very shocking for people to know that you are a militant of the CPDM.
Yes,
What gives you such verve to be so critical of the party which you belong to?
It's a very interesting question. You see, like you observed, I'm a medical doctor, and in the early 90s, I was of the SDF.
Yes.
I was of the SDF, and the reason I was on the SDF was not necessarily for the fun of belonging to the SDF. I was looking for change, something that would move the nation forward. Now, when there were those political problems at the time when Nick Ngwanyam is said to have won the elections and there was problems, I went to him and I told him, look, what I would advise you to do is join the government in a unit. I mean, national unity, and be the prime minister. What is important is for the nation to solve her problems. Your being the president is not the most important thing. Be the John the Baptist. Be part of solving the problems. And that's when I got a very negative feedback, and I realized that I was in the wrong place. You understand me? And I was more concerned about solving problems. Whether the problems are solved by the SDO or the CPDM is of no importance. The problem is to solve the problems. People have problems, solve them. So if there's a way, even if two enemies have to come together and solve the problem, that's the most important thing. Solve the problem. And whether you are called prime minister or president, that's not important. Solve the problem. So you see, my focus is about solving the problem. And therefore, with that one, I left. Then sometime around 2008, when I was going to the US, I was no longer in active politics. I was going to the US. At that time, President Mubarak had just won the elections. All right, this was December, and he just won elections in November. And what was so exciting about those elections is that President Barack is 6 years younger than I am. So I could see a young black man who is the president of the most powerful nation on earth, making things happen in America, and yet in my own house, I'm unable to speak up. Are you getting what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It became a real challenge. I mean, so it challenged me to a higher level of doing business. You know, if he could do it in America and have that change, what stops you from talking up? And then you cannot change any system by speaking lies. And so here I was I went to greet His Eminent Christian Cardinal to me, and I was just speaking with him, and we were talking about a couple of things, and the meeting was running out, and I was just about to leave. Then I turned around and said, look, there's something that's very interesting. President Obama has just won elections in America, and there's something about it that I don't understand. I'm so excited about it. Then he told me something. He said, President Obama won the elections in America fair and good. He didn't win because he's a very strong person. He won because of the platform he is standing on. So it is the platform that made him to win. It is not him. I said, and then he went further to explain the concept of platform. So that day I learned the power of a platform. Where you belong makes all the difference. Then number two, then I said in Cameroon we have problems with the CPDM that doesn't seem to tell a lot of truth most of the time.
But that's a party which you belong to.
No, I'm getting to the story. So we have the CPDM that doesn't seem to be telling truth most of the time, and we have the SDF that doesn't seem to know strategies of, you know, so we are lost. And then I was saying, okay, now I'm in the civil society. Don't you think that if we work very hard in the civil society, we can bring that change to Cameroon? And then he answered me and said, no, never. You cannot work in the civil society and bring that change. Yet you can help. But that change that we are looking for in the country can only be brought through politics. It is only in politics. And he said, by politics, I mean Christians should go into politics. No, he didn't say Christian. He said good Christians and good Muslims should join politics. And the purpose is not just go there and be there. You must have an agenda. Go there and take and be the light and the salt of the earth. You must be there and be the light and the salt of the earth. Make sure that good policies are put in place and are implemented to the letter. That's your mission. That's all. And I said, is that what it takes? He said, yes, if you do that. And then he went ahead to say, if I were not a prelate, that's what I would do. And then I looked at him, I said, so what do you want me to do? Then he told me, go and join politics. I said, okay, that's the SDF there, and that's the CPDM over there. What do you want me to do? Go to the SDF or to the CPDM? He says, join any of them and get it done. Then I thought over it. I said, but the CPDM has got a yam and a knife. Why am I going to someone who doesn't even listen? But let me go to the person who has a yam and knife. Let's begin to battle it out. You know, that's how I became a CPDM. Is this making some sense? So I was going to the CPDM. I took with the mindset of being different. I wasn't going there to be like them because I come there differently. And I came there as a progressive CPDM.
Are you not scared of landing into hot waters?
What is hot waters? Hot waters...
Because we know the CPDM is noted for what they call party discipline.
Party discipline is one thing, but I'm here for the truth. I come with the cloak. If my God is with me. I don't just come empty-handed. I come with my God. But if you can beat my God, fine, no problem. And if dying is not the issue, you should be afraid of him that can kill the body and the spirit. But as long as my spirit is free, I'm a free man. And I don't do things because I want to hurt people. I do things because I want to bring solace to people. I want the problems in Cameroon to be solved. I want our nation to grow. I want our youth to be liberated. That's what motivates me. It's not food and drink.
Okay, doctor, you are a medical doctor as well. Cameroon has been rocked by the coronavirus. We have seen the response plan of the government. How do you rate it, and what do you think can be changed to ensure that it becomes more effective?
I'm glad you asked that question. Let us say something. If you look at the way coronavirus is behaving the world over, it seems to be hitting the other nations, the developed nations, even harder. And then on Africa, it's a little bit gentle. It's not only in Cameroon. In all of Africa, it's a little bit gentle. So if you look at that, it is not because the Cameroon government did something spectacular. It's not because President Paul Biya signed a decree and the virus respected the decree. It's an act of God, and we ought to give God the glory. Are you getting what I'm saying? It's not because Cameroon, go through what the government has done. Pick 1, 2 things that you can say it is because of this that the corona did not hit us. Nothing exists like that. Because if you look at it very carefully, there was a lot of power fights and tussles over COVID control and COVID money and things. And if you ask me, most of the money has not been properly used, and most of the money has been wasted. And of course, you know that the measures like social distancing, wearing of masks, and hand washing, when the disease started, we were respecting these things. But as soon as the bars were opened, and then the buses were crowded again, it looked like those things didn't have any meaning. And most of those measures have not been as good as would have wanted them to say. If the COVID had just had to go wild because of the non-respect of those measures, would have been in deep shit. So for one reason or the other, God watches over us.
Okay, Doctor, one last question. If you were called to the government, will you accept?
It's a right. Every Cameroonian has a right to do something. But the question is, what are you going to do into the government? You are going there to solve problems. And if we have been having problems in the country, it's because a lot of people just join the government thinking just to be called minister or called something. That's not important. It's not the food. You cannot eat more rice than you've been eating. It's about going there and solving a problem and making sure the problems are solved. And the problems in Cameroon are, number 1, the Anglophone problem. Number 2, youth problems. How do you give youth the capacity to create wealth, create jobs, and so on? Change the education, because the education we have now is no use. Change the education. Learn from the South Koreans and the Finnish, and find out what Indians and Chinese are doing. Change the education. Create a system where people respect others, where there is merit, and then you kill corruption. Make sure that the orphan and the widow, they survive. You see, we waste a lot of money buying rice, buying rice from China every year to feed our people. Why do you buy rice? Why do you buy fish? Where you have the land, all those things. So there are lots of things to be done, but we seem not to be doing the right thing.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Nick Ngwanyam.
It's our pleasure.
It was a pleasure to having you with us on the very first edition of Hard Talk.
We hope that we didn't hurt anybody. We are just playing. And I'm a good CPDM, but I don't look like other CPDMs. But I'm a CPDM.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thanks.
And to you televiewers, that does it for this edition of Hard Talk. Until we meet again, bye bye.